You're listening to the Breakaway Wealth podcast, the show that helps you build wealth faster, think outside the box, and break out of the herd. Here's your host, Jim Oliver. Welcome back, Breakaway Wealth. I'm your host, Jim Oliver, and with me today, I'm welcoming Bronson Hill. Welcome to the show, Bronson.
Hey, Jim. Excited to be here, man. Excited to talk about Breakaway Wealth, man. Breakthroughs and making more money.
Absolutely. Money gives you choices. Choices gives you freedom. And so I read a little bit about you, and I know we're in alignment on this, and I'm excited to share some of the things with the audience because, sometimes it's a different source, a different language, somebody says something. And I tell people a lot of times people need to be reminded as much as they need to be educated. Not that we're not going to educate them today, but I love the things that in the pre-interview information that you sent. I'm excited to talk about. So before we get started on that, why don't you just introduce yourself to the audience? Tell them a little bit about you, what you're up to, and what your unique ability is.
Yeah, thanks, man. Well, I appreciate you having me. I think I was a well-paid medical sales professional. I was making $250K a year, so I was making good money. I was working 30 hours a week, and there were a lot of things that were great about it. I got to go into surgery and help doctors with heart surgical stuff. It was really interesting. The thing I didn't have is kind of what you're talking about with freedom. People say financial freedom, but it was really time freedom. And a lot of professionals or people that work, especially in the medical field, just don't have freedom of time. I worked with two physicians that made over $2 million a year each. And they just couldn't take a vacation. It was like they're working 60, 80 hours a week. And to me, they just didn't feel like freedom. So if you can't take time off, you can't do the things that matter. And I think that, financial freedom really allows you to really pursue the things that are important. So for me, that's how, I got started. I realized, I need to do something different. Had a rental house, decided to start buying some more, realized that single family rental homes just was not going to get me to where I wanted to be as quickly as I wanted. And I really was creating another job for myself, right? I was actually creating, once if I got to 30 houses or whatever I wanted and I can have some sort of income coming in, it still was just another job. And so I started learning about bigger deals, about multifamily syndication, which is just pooling money together from investors. And so we started raising capital for deals, and fast forward about 6 years, I've raised about $50 million, done 2,500 multifamily units. We've done private equity, oil and gas. We've done car washes. We're doing a lot of stuff in the private equity and private business space now. But now we help people get cash flow, appreciation, and tax benefits so they can, as Warren Buffett says, make money while they sleep.
I love that. I remember that there's a book that I think stole that line from him. And so there's a lot to unpack in what you just said. So let's kind of go step by step. So, Bronson, I'm older than you, but when I was a kid, probably when you were a kid, we're told to work, hard in school, get good grades, get a good job, just like you did, right? And work your butt off and save money. And 20, 30, 40 years down the road, you're going to have this lump sum, you're going to retire, and then you're going to hope that you don't run out of money. So Robert Kiyosaki always says savers are losers. Why do you think saving money is foolish?
Yeah, that's a great tee up there. Robert Kiyosaki, savers are losers, not they don't have a bright future and they're wonderful people. It's just that, we lose when we save. And, there's I talk a lot about inflation on my channels, and just that inflation I don't think is actually 3%. I think it's more like 5, 6, 7, 8%. And that's why everything costs 50% more at least than it was 5 years ago since COVID. And so if that's true, then inflation is actually higher. So I think that, for all of us, really the goal, with assets, we talk about this is not just sitting in cash because you're losing money, but to buy assets that provide cash flow, right? So we're going from cash that we make in our business or in our job, we put it into assets that sometimes there's tax benefits there as well, but they produce cash flow, right? And so there's a hedge against inflation as you do it. So I think that for most people, it's just it's getting outside of Wall Street, getting into Main Street. That's what we talk about. Wall Street. I was a what's called a registered investment advisor for a few years, which is an RIA. No, I'm still an RIA, but it's a recovering investment advisor, right? I kind of saw the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Just there's so much misalignment of interest, and just about everything we're taught about money is wrong. And we're either not taught about money, taught about it from our families, and a lot of people that are not wealthy. And that's why to learn about money, I think is incredibly valuable. It's one of the most valuable things we can do, even more than what we do in our job, is just learning about money. And this is why I read 90 books a year. This is why I wrote the book Fire Yourself, is just to really try to help people to really understand how money works, because most people have no idea. And we're just kind of going along. I think like 65% of the US is paycheck to paycheck, right? Just living from one thing to another. So unless you really are intentional about the life that you want to create, and a lot of this is mindset, as you mentioned as well, is creating a brighter future for yourself. And a lot of that involves money. You can't live independent from money. You can't be like, I'm just going to be living as a monk. You still need stuff. You need resources. So it's just so important that we learn about money. We learn about resources and how to make them work for us.
It's funny you say that because I sometimes get people that say, Jim, it's not all about money. And I say, money gives you choices, choices gives you freedom. But I say something like this is if I gave you $1 billion, right now, like I just give you $1 billion, would your church, synagogue, or your favorite charity get more or less than they're getting now?
Of
Right.
course,
So
they get more.
to me, if you have the ability, if you then you need to make as much money as you can. I'm not saying you need to hoard it, right? I think you need to have impact and serve the causes that are important to you. But I love the tagline on your book, and it says, "Replace your working income with passive income in 3 years or less."
Yeah.
Because now think about this for a second. You're 25 years old, 30 years old, 65 years old. It doesn't matter. And the prospect is you work for the next 20, 30, 40 years, save up money and hope you don't run out. Or in the next 3 years, you can learn. And let's say you had to read 90, but you don't, but if you had to read 90 books a year for the next 3 years, wouldn't it be worth it? I
Yeah.
mean,
Of course.
3 years. So talk about being free and not being a financial slave like so many people are, and a time slave, right? Because when the government's debasing our money, and everything that you have in your pockets and your Wall Street accounts are going down in value every second. Talk about the how you can use inflation to your advantage.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that, you kind of touched on a few things, but one thing I like is that, when it comes to educating yourself, when it comes to learning and growing, learning about money, um, it's not like there's some, secret black box of here's how you make money. People are doing it all the time. And I'm actually writing my second book right now called Rich Brain, How the Wealthy Change Their Brain to Change Their Bank Account. And one thing I thought when I got started was that, people typically are either they come from money or they don't. This is very common in our culture. So this leads to kind of class warfare, and that, it's something you either have or you don't, the haves and the have nots. But the facts are just the complete opposite. Fidelity Investments did a study in 2019, and they found that 86% of millionaires, Jim, are actually self-made. They did not
Mm.
inherit their wealth. They weren't given it to them. So they basically figured out, they learned a way to do it through their actions, through getting around the right people, getting mentors, getting all this. And this is where the thing is, whatever you want in your life, you can create. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes investment. And so even Warren Buffett, I think our generation's greatest investor, says the best investment you make is in yourself, right? That's the best investment that you make, because being wealthy is not having money or not having money, right? It's basically being able to, lose everything and be able to quickly make it back because of your networks, because of the skills that you have. If you ever watched the show Undercover Billionaire? I just had a
Yeah.
event on Sunday, 2 days ago, as we're recording this, with Grant Cardone. He was in town, and so I hosted about 180 people with an investing group here in Pasadena and California, and it was great. But one thing I remember from his show Undercover Billionaire, he's out there basically, nobody knows who he is, and he's out trying to. He found a way to make, I can't remember how much it was. It was $1 million or millions of dollars just within a few days, or within a period of time, 30 days, whatever it was, a short period of time. And so it shows you, if you're creative enough, we're limited by our own creativity to actually really pursue and go after things we want. There's really two things that prevent us from get there. It's meeting the right people, and it's learning how to do things. There's a quote that says, "You'll be the same person 5 years from now, except for the books you read and the people that you meet." Right. So if
Totally.
somebody
Yeah.
listening is like, I want to fast track myself in wealth. Well, you've got to get out and meet people. You got to get in amazing rooms. Sometimes you got to pay and be in amazing rooms. I want to be in rooms where people have 10 to 100x the wealth I have, or 10 to 100x the spirituality, or 10 to 100x the health. I want to be around those people because it's going to rub off on me. And the same with the books and the learning, whatever. So I think that learning and being around people and growing, this should be your part-time job. If you're busy at your job, this should be your side hustle, so that you'll get better and better. Because the most people that I've studied, people that have billions of dollars, they are learning all the time. They're always absorbing information. So we can go on more about that, but I just wanted to kind of touch on that.
No, I love that. It's funny. Yesterday I do a 25, 30-minute live meeting for our community every week at noon on Mondays. and I did why 10x goals are easier. It's like 10x is easier than 2x. So I
Love
kind
that
of
book.
expanded on that.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when you start talking to people, just what you just said, if you think, hey, I'm making 300 grand a year, I want to make 500 grand a year, then that's like 2x thinking, right? So what is it? Well, I'm going to go get more customers. Like when you were selling medical devices, you'd say, hey, I got to get more customers. I got to find some other doctors that are going to use my stuff in surgery, and you'd work harder, find more doctors, work harder, entertain more, just more,
Yeah.
right?
Totally.
But if you said, hey, I want to go, and I remember sitting down with this guy that was in business, and that was his exact thing. He was making 300, wanted to make 500. And I said, why not 3 million? He
Yeah.
goes, well, that's not realistic. And I said, why is it not realistic? It's not realistic the way you're thinking
Yeah.
now, right? Dan Sullivan is so good at that. And I mean, he coaches thousands of people of that one thing of changing that mindset. But talk about like when your mindset changed and people that obviously, Grant Cardone and the other people in this room, um, and you've talked about, I interviewed a guy, $7 billion, that's
Wow.
trying to think how many X that is in my net worth, but it doesn't matter. There's certain things that, including mindset, but talk about, because you talked about some stuff, and I want to get to that because you talked about um, health and spirituality and all
Yeah.
that. But what are some of the things that you see that are common in those people with their mindset and stuff?
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah. So I had about a 20x, 25x in my net worth in 4 years. And I
Wow.
went to a multiple 7-figure net worth. And in these interviews, I basically have talked with individuals with over 2,500, millionaires, basically average net worth of 2 million, some as high as, 40, 50 million or higher. And so I've just been able to really been able to study these millionaires. What do they have? What are the things that have allowed them to be able to get there? And the crazy thing is things like personal development, affirmations, written goals, like the common world, like people make fun of these things. Oh, you're talking to yourself in a
Mhm.
mirror, or whatever. But almost every single person that had a net worth over 10 million had some sort of mindset practice that they did daily. Like they were literally creating themselves as a new person. So one of the biggest kind of things, the discoveries that came out of all this research for me was this thing that I call wealth worthiness. And what I'm defining it as is basically the worthiness that we feel that we actually are okay with having a certain amount of money. And a lot of people say, yeah, I want the lottery. I want what I want all this, I want billions of dollars, but we don't really feel like we're worthy of it. Because if we did, we would have the money. Right. So it's just, what is it that allows us to be able to receive it? Another way to look at this is a lot of people it's kind of like it's like a thermometer, right? So if I make 100K a year, I'm just typically, even if it's with this job, I'm going to find a way to make about 100K, maybe a little more, a little less, but kind of generally, the person who's making a millionaire will kind of have the same type of thing. Oh, I feel like I deserve this. I feel like I'm able to get this. Well, this thing really exists in a lot of areas of our life. It's a worthiness. If I go into in my relationships, if I'm a single guy and I go to a party and I see a beautiful woman and I want to go talk to her because she's beautiful, I want to go say hello, but my self talk is like, oh, I'm ugly. Why would she ever like me? I've got nothing to offer, whatever. How's that conversation going to go? Like, it's not going to go well. And even if I may not even go over there, right? But versus if I say, yeah, I'm awesome, amazing, she'd be awesome. She'll be lucky to talk to me, right? So, kind of being inwardly not boastful or egotistical, but just really feeling you're deserving of it. And so, just watching how people do this again, most people they make kind of sequential jumps, like you're talking about, like an incremental. Oh, I make 200K, and then I have this thing, and now I make 250, and I'll make 300. So some people, like a lot of people, never make those jumps at all. So let's just kind of point that out. A lot of people just kind of revert or they stay the same, but some people make incremental jumps. But the way you make those really big jumps, where you go 5x, 10x, 100x, is you have to. It happens in your mindset first. It happens that you get to a place where you create it for yourself that you feel like you're worthy of it. And I can talk about some specifics that I've kind of discovered on how to do that. But it's been amazing when I see, because some people just feel like they deserve this, or they create it first and then they have this huge jump. And again, I saw it in my life, but it all started with these mindset practices that I did, and I also discovered from what people do.
You know what's funny about that is I'm a big journal guy, right? I use the bullet journal. Then I have a gratitude journal next to my bed, and I thought, like, there's all these little things that I do on a daily basis. And I was talking to somebody, and I do. There's no magic number to 3 affirmations. I do 3 affirmations, right? And so one of the things that I did, I'm 59 years old. about 6 months ago, I looked in the mirror and said, I'm going to have abs, right? Like
Yeah.
by January 1st, 2025,
Nice.
I'm going to have abs. And I got even to the point, Brunson, that I used an AI program to just say, what if I added 6 pounds of muscle and I lost 5 pounds of fat? What would I look like? And it, AI is amazing. So it
Amazing.
said,
Yeah.
so I showed it a picture with my shirt off, and I go, that's it. Right. So, I hired 2 trainers. I got food prep. I did all my supplementation, all my blood work, all my hormones, got all that together. And 6 months later, my trainer said, okay, it's like December 28th or something. Take your shirt off and send me a picture. And at 50, I have abs at 59. Now, could I still have more defined abs? Absolutely. So but I would stand in the mirror every day and I weighed myself every single day.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I was going to get hung up on the weight. I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure there wasn't anything weird going on and that I wasn't incrementally gaining weight when I didn't think I was.
Yeah.
And my water. And I wanted to measure the amount of hydration. So I love what you said about that, because it's like everybody for 30 whatever years and 37 years in business, people are going, oh, those affirmations, that Tony Robbins stuff, that breathing thing that you do, that doesn't really do anything. That heart math thing, the heart and coherence and like that doesn't do anything. And I'm like, those people at Stanford, they're pretty much idiots. They don't really understand what they're talking about. Yeah, you're
Right.
right. Yeah. I mean, just, hey, good luck at work tomorrow, so
Yeah.
like you said, there's a few things that you like. What are some of the specific, like if you could say to the audience, here's 2 things that I want to tell you to do in the next 90 days to change your life. What are those 2 daily habits that you would say?
So the first thing, the first thing
One,
really,
2, or 3, whatever.
yeah,
Bronson.
I'll give you an example. So for me, I have a business deal we're about ready to close. It will about 4 to 5x my business over. I mean, it's like tens of thousands of dollars a month of profit for me personally. I mean, it's huge. It's a huge deal for me personally. It's a huge deal for us. And basically, I look back like, well, how did that happen? And I honestly almost missed it. But what I was doing to be able to receive that, or be able to kind of like this opportunity came around, basically was creating for myself. You talk about a 10x, like the 10x person that you are, or that I am, is a different person. Like we're a totally different person. Dan Sullivan in the book, Ben Hardy, they talk about you have to let go of about 80% of what you were currently doing. So you basically are a totally different person. So in order to
Yeah.
do that, you actually have to go into the future and create and say, if I had this wealth, if I had this type of presence, if I had this type of influence, this type of whatever, you would create that person. So Napoleon Hill, in his great book, Think and Grow Rich, which if you haven't read that book as a listener, that's an incredible book. And he says, and this is, an old book, 80 years old, but he says, spend 30 minutes a day thinking about the person that you intend to become.
Mm.
Thinking about the person you intend to become. So I've been doing this, for the last, this was, it's been months we've been working on this deal now, but for months I was creating this person. What does this look like? Whatever. So this deal came around that I normally would say no to. It was a little outside our box. It was bigger in certain ways. It was challenging. It's not really what we do, but it's like, but I had a partner. But because I was creating this for myself, I was able to see it. So a lot of times, like we have opportunities around, but we can't see it because we're not creating that person out ahead of us. So I think the first thing is visualizing the person you intend to become, and really, really putting your mind at and spending time doing that. And then the second thing is I call it wealth whisperings, right? So what are wealth whisperings? They're similar to affirmations, but they're a little different, because affirmations, I think of, you just say them in the mirror. You kind of, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh, people like me. Whisperings are more having to do with where the things we say to ourselves when something's not going well, when we have a setback at work, or we do ask the girl out and she says no. What do we say to ourselves, right? So it's working on those whisperings that we're saying. And they're things like in things that you're creating. I think that we really create things in our life through our words. We visualize them, then we create them with our words. And then over time, then you actually see them. And this is even true of faith. It's like, if you go back to Genesis, in the beginning, God said, let there be light, and there was light. And a lot of me, whether people, whatever the faith background, whatever it is, people will say, hey, by your words, you actually are creating. Words are very creative. So this is where I'm very careful when people say, oh, I'm no good at this, or hey, you don't do this, or shame on you. Or I get really weird about words, because words are actually causing creative things in the spiritual realm. And it's something you actually see. You talk to people that are highly successful. They're always, not always, but a lot of times very concerned about what they're saying, what they're creating with their words.
No, I love that. So something that you're saying, and And I saw this, and then I started studying this, and I can't remember what book it was in, but it was something like this. Okay, this might not be the exact thing, but it, like, thoughts are energy, right?
Yeah.
And it takes like kind energy 17 seconds to attract like kind like energy to attract like energy. So if it's negative energy, it'll attract negative energy. If it's negative or positive energy, it'll attract positive energy. And it takes
Yeah.
68 seconds to build momentum. So
Hmm.
if you just take that as the truth, right? Then if you have a negative thought, the way that I look at it is you have 17 seconds to get rid of that, or it's going to have another negative thought, right?
Right. Yeah.
And if you don't get rid of it for 68 seconds, that now it has a momentum, and you're going in a negative direction. So what I've noticed is people that are successful, just like you just said, it's that mindset, but those affirmations. It's funny. I'm 59 years old. I'm single in Southwest Florida, right? And I walk around and I act like whatever the most beautiful woman that I see is, and I don't care how old or not old she is. I just, go, gosh, she's pretty. I'd like to talk to her. So I'm kind of like bulletproof because I don't really care if she says yes or no, because I'm looking for that right connection, that right
Yeah.
energy, right? And
Yeah.
so Tom Hopkins back in the day was like
Love Tom
something that I
Hopkins.
listened to the cassette tapes driving
Mhm.
around all over Denver. And the mindset of every time somebody tells you no, that means you're closer to a
Yeah.
yes,
That's so true.
is so true. And everybody that's successful, they don't care about the no's.
Yeah.
None of us like the maybes, because the maybes waste our time. Yes, no, perfect. Maybe, and so
Yeah.
I love that affirmation stuff. And like you just said, in the spirituality too, because, um, you brought up Napoleon Hill. Another great book by Napoleon Hill that a lot of people haven't read is Outwitting the Devil.
Yeah. It's a good
And
one.
have you read it, Bronson?
Yeah. I've read it.
And have you ever listened to it? Because I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
curious, because there's a version. It's the black cover version. There's like two versions, I think. Oh gosh, now I can't remember. But there's one where the voice is different for the devil.
Oh, interesting.
For some reason, that resonated with me. But what does he say in there? All I have to do is distract you. All I have to do is create doubt in you,
Yeah.
and then I own you.
Yeah.
Right. So all of these people that are having scarcity thinking, they might go to church every Sunday, they might go to synagogue,
Yeah.
but they're letting the devil and the enemy affect their minds. And I believe God is the king of the universe in my belief system, and the the king of the universe can do anything. So I want to follow God, not follow that let Satan tell me that I'm not good enough, or that I can't do that, or I'm not smart enough. And I was a horrible student, and I tell people I was a solid 1.2 1.3 student. I hated school. Right? It doesn't mean I'm stupid. I read a lot too. Not 90 books a year, but I read a lot. And it doesn't matter how smart you are. It matters what you can learn how to do, right?
Right.
And so, I know people right now, they say, oh, I can't get into real estate because I don't really know what I'm doing, or the interest rates are too high, or prices are too high. What do you say to people that say that?
Well, I think that there's always there's a reason not to do anything. There's you kind of touched on this a bit, that the human brain is something like 87% negative. And this comes from, years ago, you could go around the corner and all of a sudden a lion could be there and you'd have to flee for your life, right? So it doesn't
Mm.
typically happen. You're walking around in Florida or LA, like, lions in the street, or we're physically threatened for our lives, but we still have this kind of fight or flight thing going on. So I think that a lot of people really we're trained to look at the negative, we're trained to look at what lacks, but we have to really try to focus to create things that are better for us, because it doesn't naturally happen. If we're just kind of left to our own devices, the inner monologue is going to revert to negative. It's going to revert to just, oh, I don't have enough, to lack. I'm this kind of person. I wish I were this. And we can all fall, even if you do whisperings and affirmations and visualization, all this stuff. So the people that I found that are just the most successful in life, they will continue to create, and they'll continue to put great things out in front of them. But I will say to somebody who says, "Oh yeah, it's not the right time," or "I'll get to it," or whatever, there's never really a right time. There's never really a right time. The way the way that I have been successful is I realized, if there's two people, one has incredible plans, like they are just a great strategist and they know exactly all the things they're going to do. Yet they kind of really don't get going on it. And somebody else, it just simply takes action a little bit every day, every week. They're just taking little action, just keep every single day. The action person is going to absolutely crush the other person, even though the person is way smarter, they're way more strategy or whatever. If you just simply take action, and then as you take the action, you kind of, periodically step back and say, "Hey, is this actually working? Am I getting what I want to get? Am I moving toward my goals?" And if the answer is no, well, okay, maybe I need to shift. Tony Robbins will say, have the end goal and continually change your approach. Well, I tried method A to get there. If my goal is to make $10 million, well, I tried this really didn't work. I tried this one. Well, maybe still a promise, not really. This one, well, but option D, this one is it. This is a way that I can actually get there. In the book 10X is easier than 2X, he talks about that. He's like, there may only be one or two ways to go 10X, right? There's not a million different ways to do it. So you have to
Yeah.
kind of be open to try new things. And this kind of goes back to the quote that Michael Jordan said. I'm going to butcher it, but he said, I've missed over 50,000 shots. I've taken the game when he shot 56 times and missed. And he said, I'll keep on missing or I'll keep on shooting. And that's why I'm successful, right? Is that I
Yeah.
keep taking those shots. And for you, and I'm a single guy as well, I'm going to, keep going up to women and say hello, and just like, because I want to continue to push myself and to be in growth. And when I do that, I know it's a numbers game as well, that I'm going to meet somebody who's going to resonate, like you said, going to be there. So I think this works in every area of your life. I think it's just so important that we continue to move towards what we want. Otherwise, life is it's just constantly happening to us, and we're not actually happening to life. We're not actually the one creating our life. Our life is just kind of, and I see people just stuck in this. The worst feeling in the world is to feel like you're a victim and like you have no control over anything. But if any
Yeah.
listener, I would just say you do have control. You can make a change. Maybe it's in a small way, but you'll realize as you make those small changes, you'll have a much bigger vision for yourself.
Yeah. I love what you said because I'm sure you've probably read The Magic of Thinking Big.
Yeah.
Is that David Schwartz? I can't think of who the author is. Anyway, he says action cures fear, and he gives in a chapter, and he gives examples. But I've turned that, like, I think the next evolution of that quote is action cures everything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I love that you said take action. So let's wrap that around, and then I'm gonna make sure that. Well, let's do that. But so how would people? How do you work with people, and how do they find you, and how do they decide? How do you guys decide if you're a good match?
For me, how I work with people, I have a book I wrote, so people reach out that way. We work with. I'd love to give. I don't know if we're wrapping up. I have a gift for your audience that we were talking.
Absolutely.
Love to give it, but it's how to use inflation to your advantage. So we talked kind of briefly on this, and there are strategies using real estate, using debt, using precious metals, and you can borrow against. There's some things people haven't heard of, and it's a multi-page. It's about 40 pages. It's a color PDF. I'll send it to you. So if you text the word inflation to 33777, I'll just send you that, and that kind of keeps you in touch with what we're working on. So the word inflation to 33777. So I think for individuals, we have also our mastermind called the Wealth Forum, which is basically high net worth individuals. We had Ken McElroy, Russ Gray from the real estate guys. We had a former NFL player, Devon Kenner. This was in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we're going to do our next one in Orange County in June. I'm going to have some amazing guests, but it's just putting people in the room that are. I believe being in great rooms is one of the most valuable things you can do. I was in a great room, and really this was the shift for me, as I found a guy who I respected a lot in the industry and said, "Hey, how can I help you? And can I help you in this way?" And it led to basically raising $15 million together when I'd only raised 100,000, and I made about $1 million off of that one connection, basically. So that those things happen. They happen, right? And it doesn't
There
matter
you
what
go.
you're at in life. Your life will be better if you can find peers and find people that you can serve. So in that way, love to be a part of helping anybody, who's kind of getting on their goals to figure out where they want to go in real estate.
I love what you said there because the people that I mentor and people that I've helped, I think that just about anybody that's successful, that truly knows what they're doing and is successful, if you go to them and you ask them to help you, and how you can help them, I've just never seen anybody say, "Hey, I don't have time for you."
Yeah.
Because if they say that, then they're not really doing what they say. Because I've got plenty of time, So,
Yeah.
but something that you said there, about oh gosh, about the assets. Yeah. So what I want before we start to wrap up, talk about, because when you think about like a doctor or somebody, and I always tell doctors, they think like their qualified plan or their profit sharing or something like that is like this valuable asset. And let's just say a doctor's making $1 million a year, and I try to tell them that, hey, your biggest challenge is taxes.
Mhm.
And they say, well, you have to pay your taxes. I mean, I get, they almost wear it like a badge of honor. So talk about like how somebody like that, let's just say they're having 1 million of taxable income.
Yeah.
How could they get that to where they're paying zero?
Yeah, yeah. So I have a chapter in my book, Fire Yourself, about reduce your taxes potentially to zero. And again, I'm not a CPA, so I don't give any specific tax advice. A quick disclaimer, but I think that it's really interesting how the tax system works. Now, there are things I'm going to share a few terms here. So, tax evasion is
Hmm.
different than tax avoidance.
Yep.
Right. So tax evasion is go to jail. You didn't pay your taxes. You didn't pay whatever. That's not what we're talking about here. Tax avoidance is the legal way to pay the minimum amount by aligning with the government's incentives that they create. They're not loopholes. They're actually things the tax code is actually set up for you to pay less. They show you how to pay less in taxes. The
Yeah.
problem is your CPA is typically super conservative and they just simply don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to have you get audited. Really great CPAs, and actually, again, most there's a person called a tax strategist. They're typically CPAs, but most tax strategists are CPAs. I'd say 98% of CPAs or higher are not tax strategists. So these tax strategists are actually paid for people. You pay them, sometimes they'll do a free call with you, whatever, but you pay them 5 or 10K. They'll come up with a plan for you, and often they'll save people hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in taxes. How do they do it? Is they find these alignments with what the government has set up for you. So it's typically around 3 areas. One is around real estate. So if you do real estate, real estate, energy, or agriculture. Like, well, why is that? Let's talk about real estate. When the government creates housing, what happens? They create the projects in inner city, right? It does not work out well, right? So they want to have people like you and me and everything be able to create these real estate opportunities for people to be able to live. People need housing, so they create incentives for that. So if you're a real estate professional, typically most real estate professionals that I know pay zero taxes, right? There's ways you can do that through depreciation, through other sorts of tax incentives. Energy, we do oil and gas deals with our investors. We've had deals that 80 to 85% of year one investment reduces against ordinary income, which is like a magical thing, right? So you put 100K into a deal, then that somebody's tax is reduced for that year by 80. That their income is reduced by 80 to 85,000. So if you're in a 25% tax rate, that could save you 20 grand just in year one by putting money into a deal, and then it cash flows as well, and you get some tax benefits on the end. Then there's some stuff around agriculture. So you think, why does the government do this? They do this so they can provide incentives. So I think it's worth it. I know people that pay. I know a guy who makes over $1 million a year. He paid 500,000 per year last year in taxes. I said, man, you are like, this is your like negative side business that you're losing it all out the back door. So I think it's absolutely worth looking into it. So if anybody's interested in that, they can reach out. We have some tax strategists we work with, and I'm happy to refer there. But I do think it is worth. And I've seen many stories. My tax rate was 250K. I was paying a 25% tax rate. I reduced it to about 1%. It would be zero, but I live in California, which California finds a way to take something. But again,
Yeah.
I think it's your right to say, hey, how can I align with the government to do the things that they incentivize and pay as little tax as I legally can?
So you think about that. If you made, let's say you made, again, I'm just using a round number to make it easy. You make $1 million a year, right? And you
Yeah.
say, well, I've just got to pay taxes. How much time and effort would it make sense for you to put in to figuring out how to even reduce your taxes by 50%, right?
Oh, it's huge. Yeah.
And over your lifetime, you're going to put away this magical 10% of what you earn, right, in some kind of Wall Street instrument, and hope that it grows and somebody doesn't steal it from you and make a mistake or all these things that could happen. And you'll spend hours like looking at stocks and stuff like that. But if you studied how to pay less tax and what you needed to do, I have a friend who's, I think he's maybe 40 now. 10 years ago, he had less than $1 million of real estate. Now I think he has 800 million of real estate
Yeah.
owned by him, right?
Amazing.
And I think he, a few years ago, so I'm sure he's making more now, but he was making about $6 million a year,
Amazing.
zero tax,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you already know that, but I think sometimes Bronson, I say that and people don't believe me. I
They don't
think,
believe it. They think it's like, oh, you either doing something illegal or it's
yeah,
wrong or whatever. But then the problem, I mean, you get into Rich Dad Poor Dad, especially the cash flow quadrant. I actually like that book.
love
The
it.
second book, the better, was even better because it talked about the quadrants. Right, if you're an employee, typically you're paying about 40% in tax. If you're self-employed, like a physician or somebody, a really high earner, you would pay up to 60%. And then, of
Yep.
course, a business owner is about 20%, and an investor is about is zero. So if you just search cash flow quadrant, you search that online, you'll see the book or you see this. It's like a four square thing that you'll see the different letters and the different images. But it's just, Tom Wheelwright is a friend of mine. He's Robert Kiyosaki's tax guy. He says, to change your tax, you got to change your facts. You got to change how you make the money, how you invest the money. What are you doing with it? And again, a lot of times there's a way. It's just that we haven't, maybe you haven't researched it enough. But there's all kinds of, I mean, there's like 25 different ways to reduce your taxes. I had an event recently called the Tax Free Summit, and just talking through some of these different possibilities. So, like in our group Wealth Forum, we talk. It's like things we geek out on. Is how do people help reduce taxes? Because it's huge. I mean, the net benefit of that over 5, 10, 15, 30 years is we're talking about millions and millions of dollars that people are just not paying attention to, or not. Oh, it's just what it is. It's like, no, you can find another way.
So what's amazing is you want to get to the end of your life, whenever that is, and you want to have no regrets, right?
Yeah,
And I think there's so many people out there that get to the end of their lives and they're like, that was it. Like, I don't want to
yeah,
be that guy, right?
yeah.
And
That's
I
it.
always say that 59 is halfway. I stole that from Dan Sullivan. But
Yeah.
all right. So thinking of Dan Sullivan, thinking of all the people that you've talked to throughout your life and your professional life, the things that have made different people have given you a lot of advice. But what's the best advice somebody's ever given you?
Best advice I was ever given was, if you want to grow your net worth, you have to develop your network. And really that comes through those two things, right? Networking and education, getting in the room, going to meetups, going to conferences, and not even just that, finding ways to provide value. A lot of people go to successful people and they'll say, hey, give me an autograph, do a selfie, I want this from you, mentor me. But if you go to those people and you say, "Hey, I noticed you. This is your business. Can I help you in this way?" That just opens incredible doors. It's just amazing when you approach those people. It's like magic. People say, "How do you get close to these amazing people?" It's like, well, I try to show up with a service attitude. So if you
Yeah.
show up and you network in the sense of, I'm going to serve, I'm going to give first,
Yeah.
doors will open for you because people like you. They like when people pay attention to what they need.
Another great book. I mean, we've mentioned a few great books, but The Go Giver, right,
Yeah,
is
Bob
amazing
Burg,
book.
yeah,
Bob Berg. I've had Bob on the show. He's a great guy, and he's the real deal. And
yeah.
most of these guys that write books, they're not just writing books to try to sell a $20 book. They're writing it because they care and they're trying to help you. So, thinking of books, Brunson, if God came down from heaven and only allowed you to retain the knowledge from one book that you've read, what would that book be?
It's really tough, man. I read so many books, and I'm such a
It
big
could be a
nerd. So
couple if there's a couple.
okay, I got a couple. So one on the personal development side is a short book. It's called The Gifts of Imperfection. It's by Brené Brown, and it just talks about living an authentic, wholehearted life. And I think that anybody who's a spiritual person, anybody who's not, just living up from a place of authenticity, I think is so wonderful. So that's
Yeah.
second one is called Never Split the Difference. It's by Chris Voss, a former FBI negotiator. It just practical topics on how do you actually get what you want out of life. How do you help people? How do you work in a way that's helpful? And so he's got all these great stories about he was the lead FBI negotiator for international negotiations. So people get kidnapped around the world, usually 1 to 2 a day. Americans get kidnapped, and he would be on the phone trying to figure out how help these guys get their loved ones back. And just really great book. So
No, those are two great books. And tell everybody again how to find your book, Fire Yourself.
yeah, so Fire Yourself is on Amazon. Again, we got that free giveaway for the
Yeah.
how to use inflation to your advantage. So text the word inflation to 33777, and then you can hear about our offerings, our deals. We're doing deals all the time. A lot of cash flow deals right now, which is really harder to find in real estate. So we've shifted a little more oil and gas, private equity, other things. But love connecting with folks, and just any way to try to help get people toward their goals. So really appreciate
Awesome.
you today.
Bronson, thank you so much for being on the show. And audience, I encourage you to go to Bronson. It's bronsonequity.com, right?
Yeah, that's my website. Yeah.
And go to the website. We're gonna put in the show notes again how to get the gift that Bronson so graciously is giving you. And it's make it something, right? Like get it, look at it, make it something valuable, and then figure out how you can help Bronson. You know what I mean? Like that's the go-giver. That's the part that to me is amazing. When you and I love your the best advice is networking with the right people. And when you're in the right room and you're with the right people, you just feel like lifted. And it's like anything else. You might go to 10 conferences and 3 of them might be home runs, and one of them might be, you might think, well, that was a waste of 2 or 3 days. And if it is, it is, right? But if you get one idea out of it that makes you $1 million, then it wasn't that big of a waste, right?
100%. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for being on the show. And audience, we're going to wrap this up like we always do with the incredible words of Earl Nightingale and The Strangest Secret. So take it away, Earl.
Here's the key to success and the key to failure. We become what we think about. Now let me say that again. We become what we think about.
Thanks for listening to the Breakaway Wealth podcast. Be sure to subscribe to this show wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. If you want to start increasing your wealth building ability right now, go to community.createtailwind.com to join our free online community and get access to free, in-depth training designed to help you build real, lasting wealth. See you next week.